I just was kind of hoping to bring up a clarification point for those listening. I thought maybe you guys could clarify it for them. There's a lot of people in here that understand that when we say there are 100 projects that will be opening up with Pulsechain. I know there's probably people that are in here trying to learn about Pulsechain, and they might get the idea thinking that day one, in their head, that's what they're thinking. I just was hoping that you guys would just kind of clarify what that actually means, because there's ones that will not be opening on day one, even though they're ready. And I'm just kind of hoping maybe you guys could create that difference in their mind so they don't have certain expectations. So it's just more of a clarifying thing I was hoping you guys could do for them.
I'll clarify a little bit. So yeah, there's been, it feels like 2 years of building on Pulsechain. And when Pulsechain goes live, I'm sure some of those protocols will be able to launch day one, but others will have to do some more internal testing or even community testing, look at their gas efficiencies, get some contract numbers for different swaps and routing that might be occurring on Pulsex. And then others might just wait for a little bit of stability in the price of Pulse, for example. So you'll see this trickle effect where initially day one, there might be just a handful of projects, and as the weeks go on, it just starts to snowball.
I think when you are talking about projects that are going to be deploying on Pulsechain, you need to define a token to an application and an application to something that's reliant on an oracle. So tokens can essentially deploy at any time. That's just based on when they believe is the best time to deploy a token, because again, it's just paired in a liquidity pool, or it's a ratio. Most tokens don't have underlying things that are going to affect it through volatility, besides the fact, Hart's law, it's going to be paired to probably Pulse. But when you're talking about something that's going to have an oracle and a highly volatile asset, yeah, it's probably not the best thing to deploy in the first few months. You need to let the volatility go. So obviously oracles need to read data from somewhere as well. So you need to actually have reliable data sources. So until there's multiple data sources that you can pull that information from, until you can verify that there's multiple nodes in the network that are putting up that data. So for instance, if you were using any oracle service, I'm not going to name any, but say you were, multiple nodes in that network actually put up data, and then they use DEX aggregators to essentially filter that information. If you don't have multiple sources, or multiple nodes, I should say, putting up that data to be aggregated, it's extremely easy for somebody to manipulate or act maliciously in that network. So oracle services need to be established with data sources. So they won't be deploying very early on. If you're looking at something that's collaterally backed by Pulse, that won't be deploying early on either. That will need at least 3 months, because you're talking about a brand new token that's going to be highly volatile. You don't want your collateral application to put users at risk. So there will be a delay period again until the founders feel like it's a more stable environment and more safer for users. If they're deploying early with collateral backing of Pulse, I would be questioning them. NFT marketplaces, volatility doesn't overly affect them, but user base does. So say they were still in development and not completely ready, deploying a month, 2 months out, 3 months out still isn't a very bad thing, because obviously the attention isn't going to be on NFTs in the early days. Yes, and NFT projects that are looking to deploy, well, they need to wait for the NFT marketplace that they want to be, promoting, maybe, so to speak, in the early days to be able to deploy their NFT collections on them. So there's multiple variables when you're actually talking about projects that are deploying and when they're going to be deploying, and each project will have different answers. Bridging platforms that maybe use Pulsex as liquidity source to fill their orders or to route a user's orders, so to speak. Well, they're reliant on Pulsex having a substantial amount of liquidity. And that goes back to Fixabot. Will it all be deployed 100% at the start, or maybe 5-10% in the early days and then gradually growing? Will the community bridge over enough assets and put up enough liquidity pools for that bridge to actually be able to route out orders? So applications have their own variables, so to speak. Lending protocols need liquidity on them. People need to either put up the liquidity or they need liquidity of their own. Do they want to be subjective to allowing people to short in extreme volatility and hurt their users, or will they maybe wait a little while? So each founder kind of has to answer that question themselves, but you do need to question that founder if they're doing something that potentially would hurt users or potentially doesn't make sense. So again, it's all about knowing the project that you're either invested in or that you're trying to watch to be able to judge based off that.
So things like Hedron and Hex get copied over immediately. They're just code. That's available on day one. These other things she's talking about with oracles, you need to think of these things as like engines, right? And you need to make sure, like, it's almost like an airplane. You need to make sure the conditions are right before you try to take off, right? So I'm building 2 projects that are very much in this category, where we use our own fallback oracles, and where volatility is a very important component of them. And I would say the same goes probably for liquid loans. So I'll be waiting until the environment is right, even if we're 100% ready. We'll probably deploy the code and use it internally just to see how things are working, but we won't bring that out to the public yet. Until we're reasonably sure everything is safe to be used, because this is the biggest risk we have, is that we launch it when things are too volatile and it breaks, or someone can exploit it very easily because it's so volatile. So for guys that are building things like myself, we're absolutely going to wait, and you should expect us to wait, and you should encourage us to wait. But having said that, we can also issue the token early if we want. There's nothing stopping us from doing that.
I think what you're highlighting, Buck, is that every team has its own timeline. Every team has its own technical requirements, right? And every project is going to launch on its own timing. So really, when we say 150 projects, that's just means that there are 150 things plus things that are being developed for Pulsechain that will be coming in their own time, right? So whether it's day 1, day 30, day 60, day 90, whatever, right? I think the point is you're not going to have like the first year be a big, empty room with barely anything in there. You're going to have a chain that's living and breathing, that's going to be constantly evolving and changing and having new things coming along for folks to utilize. That's one of the key differentiators from these other Ethereum forks.
Yeah, that's a big picture, and that's exactly right. When you're putting a year of your life into building these things, you don't want to have them break on day one, right? You want to be in it for the long term, right? So some things are more complex, and yeah, we definitely see that big picture the same way, mate, where it's going to be just a really interesting blockchain with lots of users, lots of very good salesy people as kind of its core user base, right? You see guys like Funding Gym, natural salesman, Richard, natural salesman, so many of you guys are. You're going to get out there and let people know about it. And it's it's really exciting. All these other esoteric L1s don't have what we have, which is just normal average people and in abundance. And I think we're going to look back on this delay on Pulsechain, which I don't think was deliberate, but I think it's actually for the best that it happened, and for this reason. Like, I think it's actually going to work out really well for us. And all the tech specs that we gave up by becoming, basically an ETH clone, I think are maybe not nearly as important as just having something that relates easily to ETH and brings those people over, and for us to be able to build all these things for Ethereum users and get them on our team, because we have the higher upside potential, which, I think Ethereum is wonderful. It's my biggest position, but it doesn't have the upside potential that we have in this community. And, that should be obvious to any ETH whale. And I think once guys like Eric Wall they even start to understand it, when they go, well, if this thing does come, there are people like Katie, there are people like Gary, and there's lots of us out there that are really motivated to make this thing succeed. And all the little nerdy L1s out there don't have necessarily that. So I'm really excited about this, guys. And I think this delay is going to be for the best in the long term. But yeah, don't worry about day 1, day 10, day 30. It doesn't really matter. Think about what year 1, year 2, year 3 is going to look like.
I definitely agree.
I think it goes back to what Corey was saying earlier on, where that it's all about community. And when you look at other chains, you look at Phantom, Avalanche, Binance, Polygon, there's a lot of chains that have been doing things for quite some time now, but they don't have a community around the chain itself. Their community is around a specific project or two, right? So you're not going to find a Avalanche community that is avid about everything being built on there and really cares about the success of the chain as a whole. this is a very unique situation. And we're really hoping that this is going to be one of the major things to propel Pulsechain into something that can't be ignored. So
absolutely couldn't agree with you more. And I want to say one of those markets, especially here in the United States, because I'm one of them. I'm a 63-year-old baby boomer, and I can't talk to a single friend of mine about crypto. They think I'm out of my mind. But and I mentioned this on the last live stream, we need education. I know somebody spoke up and said, nah, if you don't know it, you don't know it. I might have heard them wrong. No problem. We do have to educate. We have to dummy it down and get these people involved, because there's billions of dollars here with baby boomers. Before the government takes the rest of our money, we got to get it invested. And I'm telling you, I'm going to help this community be successful. Toshi knows this. I know a lot of influential people with the resources to get involved in something like this. So I'll be working on it with everybody else as well. This is an exceptional community. I really mean that.
We appreciate you being a part of the community, even though, so one thing that I have learned since joining the community, a lot of big names in the community, I understand that they're influencers and that we all support them, but there is a lot of smaller people in the community that a lot of people overlook. And I would just put out the notion that maybe not all of those smaller people should be overlooked, because again, people like Michael, they are building massive collaborations with massive companies. There's a lot of smaller aliases around our community that people should pay attention to, even though they're not, because those people are sometimes more important than people that you don't even realize who they are behind that.
I know there's been a lot of, talk back and forth with, everybody's like asking like when things are going to launch. And obviously, we have to be patient, like as a community. I know a lot of other communities have dealt with having to wait for things to launch. And, I'm just excited to be a part of the community, and I want to learn as much as I can. I don't want to come in here and act like I know what I'm talking about, because, I'm still getting familiar with, Hex, Pulsechain, Pulsex, and the entire community. The one thing that confuses me, though, as an outsider, because obviously I know the Hex community is pretty big. You hear of Hex, and then you hear of all these other little side things like Hedera, then you hear of Zen. And to be honest with you, as an outsider and not really understanding this as well, and I don't know if I could speak for like a lot of other people, but is this all... I mean, I'm assuming none of this is tied to Hex, but what is the difference between like Hex and Zen? Because I'm so confused, because it seems like a lot of Hex people talk about Zen, and then some people are like, no, we don't talk about Zen. So if I could just get some clarity or just some education from somebody that is knowledgeable in the space that can break this down for me, I would greatly appreciate it.
Different ERC20 tokens. If you want to know about Zen, I would just go do your own research. If you want to know about Hex, please feel free to continue jumping in these types of spaces and ask any questions that you want. I personally try to remain more Hex and Pulsechain related myself, so I don't really want to talk about other things so openly. So Pulsechain is being developed by the same founder as Hex. I think you try to say Hedron. Hedron is a derivative of Hex, so it's built on top of Hex. But again, if you want to jump in some more spaces or even shoot me a DM, I can send you in some great places to learn about more things.
If you have a question about Zen, you can. Jack Levin is here in the space, so you can always reach out to him. It's his project, so best to go to the source.
Thanks, guys.
Quick question. I just wanted to, a lot of people are talking about, adoption. Just wanted to ask the brilliant minds here about MetaMask versus sort of Aurochs and some of the other wallets coming out for Pulse and linking to hardware wallets, and what your opinion is there for, I guess, more ease of use for some of the newbies trying to get into DeFi.
I will go maxi on this one and say Richard Hart is developing a wallet, and he has stated that there is still a wallet guy developing it, and that he is very active in doing so. And I would probably say I would just continue to use MetaMask until that wallet drops, because I can almost guarantee, knowing Richard, he will be working on everything that you could possibly think of to do with a wallet. Integrating everything that you could find on multiple wallets currently, plus trying to find easier way to onboard through that wallet. So yeah, not meaning to go mega maxi and just ditch every other wallet, but I would just personally keep using MetaMask or your hardware wallet with MetaMask as an interface, and then just wait for that wallet to drop, because I would say it's not going to be that far away. I believe that it's been under development for about a year. So
excellent. Thanks. Thank you very much, guys.